Right. Well, that's what I want to get into is for those in the audience that may not be familiar with, how Crowley came up and how he became such an influential piece of this, what you call New World Order. Could you talk a little bit about that? What, how did he come up and become so influential in this kind of realm?
I think that's an important question. So you have somebody who's born in 1875 at the apex of really the British Empire. So it's a Victorian era. He's very well educated. He comes from a wealthy family. When his parents passed away, they think that his inheritance equals like 20 million pounds. So he never had to work. And he dedicated himself to really three things: mountain climbing, poetry, and occultism. And he became part of these kind of elite secret societies. One is called the Golden Dawn, and he came through the Golden Dawn. So Golden Dawn is a post-Masonic society. So he'd already learned everything he learned about Masonry to the Golden Dawn. Then he joined as German and became eventually the head of a group called the Ordo Templi Orientis, which was a German secret society. And his kind of like what he learned was about sex magic, which is a lot of people were doing that in Hollywood apparently, and drugs, the use of drugs. So I think he was a real precursor to the 60s revolution, cultural revolution, which really was a kind of cultural revolution. But like I said, he was always associating with elitists. He's writing all the time. He really never worked. So he had this vast corpus of poetic and magical writings. And he had this view, and I include that in Prophet of Evil. Like he saw that he was a prophet of a new age. He really tried to style himself as that, or a prophet of what he would call a new Aeon. And really wanted to create this change in societies. But the change that he wanted wasn't some type of egalitarian. In one of his doctrines, Liber 77, which ties into some of the numerology of 9/11, he said the intro comes from out of the book of the law, which is the slaves shall serve. So he had an aristocratic, he thought that the best type of social organization was the feudal one, which, you would think after the progression of kind of enlightenment and things like that, we would have moved on past having this idea of, a literal feudal government. But for Crowley, that was the ideal, being run by kind of a new elite almost. So I think that's kind of ties into his ideology, ties into the New World Order ideology, which really is a neo-feudalism, where you just have kind of these mind-raped, beguiled mass formation psychosis hordes being ruled over by a kind of an elite beyond that has values beyond all traditional values. So I think you can see that ideological tie through Crowley to the kind of modern international, what would you call the New World Order,
Right.
of which Biden really is a part of. I mean, they've given tons of speeches about that, talking about the New World Order too, which you can kind of see, like you mentioned earlier, this whole event about what this virus is, the subtext or the agenda behind the virus. So I think, and I mentioned in my book too, I mentioned actually at the very end of the book that they will use, and this was written in 2010, but I actually mentioned that they will use vaccines to kind of initiate the New World Order. Poison vaccines, this is page 200. Currently, a majority of vaccines used in medicine are tainted with poisonous material. Any rational person would realize these ingredients are revolting, disgusting, have various serious deleterious implications for the human body. So I include that back. I was saying that in 2010, so you were in the present 2022. Anyway, so understanding Crowley, his ideas, his ideology, I think very important. And that's why I tied it in. That's why I wanted people to understand the events of 9/11 and had to go back in history to understand Crowley to make the past present.